Hi. So, making my way from the Florida Keys through Florida. Today is the 26th of September 2021. And I saw a sign or a flag that said Trump won. And in reference to the 2020 election, yes, by all standards that would be considered under normal circumstances, absolutely. By the showing of the amount of people that showed up to rallies that were open to the general public. Granted, he's had rallies in the 2016 election, which, yes, he by those standards, he had the probably a large number that were pretty close in comparison in reference to the overall within each of the 50 states of the United States of America in support of the re-election in 2020 compared to the 2016 rally election. It would just be, I would guesstimate, it would be more spread out in comparison to the more condensed areas. And so I feel that with 46, the way it was arranged with certain things, it was polled that 46 was going to have a landslide in Trump's favor for his reelection. So I think it was kind of the metaphor I can give is a gentleman's agreement, where you have certain knowledge and you have an overall feel of things. So in order to keep things in a more balanced view or a calmer type of aspect, having the rallies the way they were instead. But you can see from the rallies in the 2020 election to the 2016 election that 45 had plenty of people that were standing in support. He probably had more people that were standing in support in the re-election cycle during 2020 compared to the election cycle in 2016. However, there is that factor of the technology portion, which, for those of you who can recall, around the time frame, I can't remember if it was June, July, August, or September, the fact-checking was more involved on Facebook and Twitter and a few other technology companies' social media websites. Then, shortly thereafter, I think it was around October, which was after early voting had started, that the technology companies, however you want to put it, for social media, had put out election integrity. It was almost like a software coding nod that there were technological portions that were looking into the verification processes, not just in fact checking regarding the news that was being put out, because of a lot of the portions during the 2016 election, but also in reference to the voter identification and a few other aspects. So, in my opinion, I would not be surprised if, and I've written about this, if you go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, you will be able to see that I had written up a few things where it seemed as though the software programming was not only checking that, but also in reference to the fact checking as far as news, but also what people were posting on social media itself. Now, I don't know what the tagging would be for that per individual, per post. Now, I know if I remember correctly, there were people who were complaining about being banned from Facebook because of certain fake news that they were posting. There were too many inconsistencies. Now, I don't know if those inconsistencies have to do with who the people were meeting with, what they were discussing, because it is known that most technology devices, whether, since I'm in the area, you can see the ocean behind me, whether you are out on a boat, and there's obviously technology in reference to boats, but also cell phones and whatnot like that, and the laptops, desktops, tablet devices, whatever you personally use for technology, in whichever ways, being around. And the definition or explanation I had given in reference to a few journal blog entries on my website in the ornery PSA area, www.susanmeeling.com, in those election area of my journal blog entry article sort of set up, there is the description where I bring up that it seemed that the software not only was checking into what news was being put out, but the connection portions to what people were discussing, who they were discussing with, and another point that I had brought forward had been in reference to donations. And so if people were, you have every right to donate to whoever you want to vote for and whatnot like that. However, in regards of the lying and the number of donations and the financial contributions, and I don't mean just in reference to, I do not mean just in reference to 45 and the re-election. I mean in the overall election completely, whether Democrat, Republican, or independent. And so in the state of Texas, I would guesstimate you have a larger number of people who donate to the Republican Party. And with that set of donations to the Republican Party, depending upon each person, I would guesstimate for the software programming of that there would be a certain number of tags. And for those who do gaming, you would have better words for this, because more current technology games compared to what I grew up playing in the 1980s and 1990s, because I did, Mortal Kombat and Sonic the Hedgehog. It's a little bit of a jump, but it is what it is, Lion King and Mario Brothers. And so anyway, for those who understand what I'm referring to in regards of the way, like in Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario Brothers, if you hit certain things, you get a certain number of extra points. So in a reverse way, in reference to the election integrity software and the fact-checking software, whoever had done the coding for that, I would guesstimate that there would be a
continue on US 1 North for 20 miles.
I'm in Florida, and I'm about to pass Jewfish Creek. So for clarifications, let me turn the GPS down. So in that aspect of the election integrity, I have a feeling that it does check into the donation portion additionally. So I had given the reference where I had my cards, my website, and stuff like that, and thinking that there is the possibility of just, I mean, there is, I admit, some upset because of personal issues in a few regards. However, in reference to the election integrity and the fact checking, if there were a bunch of people, because of the facts that I had written about a multitude of different topics on my website, www.susanmeeling.com, as to if there was a correlation to the fact checking and election integrity. So for each individual who, in this reference, let's say they had donated finances to whichever political party, but also had donated finances to different political individuals. I'm going to throw this out there that there could be a possibility with the way whoever had made the technology software of that on Facebook and Twitter would, and other social media platforms, would have the ability to discuss certain portions as to what would be considered docking. And so if that's the case, I mean, again, you can look at the facts of how many rallies there were, how many people were at the rallies, and so on and so forth, per city, per state. You know, Texas is not the only state that had pro-Trump rallies, and not the only state that had people doing block walking, and so on and so forth. So I do believe that 45 actually was reelected. I do believe that 45 had enough votes, more than enough votes, that actually would have been a massively huge landslide victory for his reelection with Mike Pence as Vice President of the United States of America. However, I have this feeling that because it was made known in the 2016 election as to how many were really getting to know the facts as to what involvement technology has had in social media, as well as news, and at many rallies during the 2016 election, 45 had brought up that particular aspect regarding fake news. And so it wouldn't be a surprise to me if some people came up with software programs during the 2016 election to actually check that out and see that and have the cross-referencing of the different pingings and stuff like that. And so I genuinely believe that 45 had enough in the popular votes as well as the delegate votes and the different electoral. I know there's a few different levels in regards of the election process, but I do believe he actually had enough. I think that it has to do with the way it was arranged to do the fact checking to make sure that if you are really going to vote for whoever you're going to vote for, as to if you're speaking the facts, because it's not just when you take in consideration elections, whether it's a presidential election or in between cycles, you know, which is there's an election every year, there is the misconception, I would guess, that some people don't necessarily understand or know, possibly, I don't know, as to the donation portion, as to whether or not there's involvement and whatnot like that. And so I kind of have this feeling that the fact checking and the election integrity had gone and looked into that, as well as who was being spoken with, what they were, you know, as far as technology, your messages, your phone calls, your emails and stuff like that. So what you were willingly a part of, if you had more than one social media account, what were they? Were you honest about them? What were they for? Are they only for one thing, or is it, you know, however you do that? So on my website, you know, I do the best I can to make sure that everything's updated as best as possible. But I don't know how many people have done that. So in that reference, I genuinely believe that 46 President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris, had won the election because of the election integrity and fact checking in reference to individuals who were supporting 45 at the time. President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, and Vice President of the United States of America, Mike Pence. So I don't know how accurate I am on that. I would not be surprised, though, because of the mail-in ballots, news reports in conjunction with that. So that's something to take in consideration in quite a few ways, not just in reference to the 2020 election cycle, but even in this year, 2021. I mean, it is September the 26th of 2021, and so there's an election coming up in November, just the same. It's just not normally as well known, so you have the ability to go and check to see what is in your local and state areas, as well as there's the possibility of federal elections, different bills each year. Now, personally, I've had this view for a while. I won't vote in every election, not because I don't care. I will vote automatically in the presidential elections. However, especially after waking up from my coma, from my Palm Sunday 2000 head injury, I had made a decision, because I was born and raised in New Jersey, and it being a very blue state. And I knew that the state of Texas especially in 2000, is a red state. And I felt that even though I had every right to vote however I wanted to, being 18 at that time during the 2000 election, I felt that election I had every right to. And I did a straight Republican ticket because of my personal viewpoints. It worked out, in my opinion. However, the in-between elections, so 2001 election, 2002, and 2003 elections, I didn't vote in those elections, partially because of a lot of the stuff I was handling at the time, as well as I didn't know enough and didn't have the ability to look into the individual candidates or bills as much as I would have preferred, because I wanted to make an informed decision. And so in reference to the way college is and that sort of thing, how that kind of really does impact different local and state areas when it comes to the election processes, I wanted to take a stand, in my opinion, that I thought would be most beneficial in a way which made sense to me. So even though I wasn't in college, I had been new to the state of Texas, and then later in other elections, if I moved and it was in between times and I didn't understand enough of the wording, or I didn't understand enough from what information was available, I wouldn't vote, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't understand. I needed to make sure that I understood. And I believe that you should be able to make an informed decision. So that's why I have voted the way I have. And so I think that's additionally something to take in consideration, not just with the fact checking, but also the election integrity for the 2020 election and future elections. I mean, even this current year. So it's kind of funny. I'm just going to turn the camera around real quick. So it's a good time. It's a little bit crowded on the road, but it's also the afternoon. So that's my opinion as far as the election integrity. I've gone into it in writing. Again, you can go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com. You go to the area, the Ornery PSA, and that's my journal blog. It has different categories. I do the best I can to organize them. And so, because it's just me, doing the best I can. So I think that that's something people should take into consideration regarding not just the election cycle of 2020 when it initially came out, but also in reference to the current election in 2021 and future elections. Because those donations, I do think, have had something to do with how the voting records went across the board, not just in the state of Texas. And since some people own property in more than one location, I'm not certain what that would entail regarding election integrity and fact checking. I don't know if having, there are some people who are lucky enough to be able to have property in more than one state, or some people have it in more than one area of one state. So, let's say somebody has property in the state of Texas, in the state of Colorado, and in the state of Utah. I don't know how the election integrity or fact checking would be taken into consideration regarding that, on top of the other parts I went over. So that's something to think about in that reference, because I don't know what the donation portions would be looked into in that. And so I know that there was a guy who did I had heard it on, I think it was Fox News. I got into it. I liked this guy's way of bringing it about. I can't remember specifically the name of the show, but I know it was something like The Political Circus or something like that. That was very interesting how he had brought that about. And if you listen to the different points in the different episodes, I think that a lot of the aspects that he had brought up would be something that you could take into consideration in regards to even not just the 2016 election, but also the 2020 election. So, hope that it was easy to understand from this little video, and possibly assistance regarding my website and the different details of. And go check it out, www.susanmeeling.com. It's in the Ornery, PSA area. And I hope you guys have a good day.